Guys, what's going on? Welcome back to a brand new 31 on 31 ranking. Thank you so much to Cody Leech for inviting me over to do this ranking of every Nolan, Fincher, and Tarantino film combined. It was such a blast being able to do this, but just a full discretion, this video was filmed back in December because that's when the video was supposed to go up. Things come up, and now it's coming out today, and I'm so excited for you guys to get to watch this. Make sure to go check out all the other channels who are also doing this, all part of the Auto-P stream, and of course Sean Chandler and Lindsay from Mayhem. They are all great YouTubers, and as well, I cannot wait to see their rankings because I guarantee they're going to be a lot different than mine, guys. But without further ado, guys, head into this ranking, have some fun, and make sure to share down below your guys' thoughts as well. Coming down at my number 31 is easily going to be Death Proof. This is a movie that I just never care to rewatch. In fact, out of all of these films, I think it's the worst one. It's a movie that's just never appealed to me, which sucks because when it comes to that Grindhouse marathon that Robert Rodriguez and Tarantino did, I love Planet Terror. But Death Proof is just okay. It's slow, it's a little bit meandering, and while I think the performances are great, especially Kurt Russell in the role, I mean, Kurt Russell is excellent, and I do like some of the old flasher horror tones they throw in there. It just feels like this should have been a 20-minute installment, maybe even a little bit longer, instead of a full-length feature film, and I think that's where it kind of comes down to in a disappointment for me. Death Proof's a film that I like, but I don't love, and at times I think it's quite boring, and when it comes down to this whole entire list, it comes down to my number 31. And coming down at my number 30 is also not that great of a movie, and that is Alien 3. I think this movie is not great. I haven't rewatched this one in years. The reason that this one is above Death Proof is because I was an alien in it, and I like the Alien franchise. I don't love it, but I like the Alien franchise, and if it came down to rewatching and which one I would rather rewatch, I would probably rather rewatch Alien 3, and at least maybe the director's version, because I haven't seen that version. I heard it's a little bit better. Still, I digress. Alien 3 is not that great of a film either. It has like zero tension. I think the concept's fine, but a lot of the story decisions that they make with the characters are not great, and in fact kind of tamper with the rest of the Alien story that we knew and loved beforehand. I don't blame Fincher for any of that. It's not that great of a movie, and it's under his filmography. Of course, coming down at my number 29 is Following. This is Christopher Nolan's first film, and it's actually a really good one. The reason it's at my number 29 is budget-wise. This is a very small film that, in all honesty, is just good. I enjoy this one to a certain degree, but it's not one that, again, I rewatch. And you'll kind of get that throughout this whole entire list, that a lot of this list is based on what I would rewatch, the film, and in general, how the film is made. And this goes a little bit different than some of the other rankings that I've done on this channel, whether it goes between Tarantino, Nolan, Fincher, which I've all ranked all their films. It's going to be a little bit different and jitter around on here, and especially since time has passed on a lot of these films and the way that I feel a lot about them now. But again, Following, it's a good film. It has good performances. I like this idea of this man following this guy, and then this guy pretty much taking him under his wing, and the weird craziness that it kind of goes into. I actually wouldn't mind seeing Nolan maybe take the same idea again, but into a bigger adventure, or even in general a bigger film, because again, this film was made for like what feels less than like $50,000, and you just got to give him a shout out on that. And coming down at my number 28 is going to be Jackie Brown, which I really enjoy. I think this is actually one of Tarantino's stronger scripts when it comes down to a very implanted dialogue that is very much nuanced but new. Actually, even adding in, I think the characters in Jackie Brown are very interesting. The only thing that really comes down to Jackie Brown and why it falls to her so low is, again, that rewatchability. I don't really care for the story going about. A few times that I have seen it, the story just never grabs me in. It's the characters, it's the dialogue that I'm more intrigued with, and I think that's actually one of Tarantino's faults at times, is his storytelling. I think the dialogue and the characters are always so interesting, but the story you take us on, I need to see where we're going. And while I love a lot of Tarantino's films, he's one of my favorite filmmakers, when it comes down to some of his earlier films, that's really much how I feel, and Jackie Brown, it really much ends up falling into that issue. Now to my number 27 is going to be Memento. I really like Memento, and I finally got it this year. Like, I got what this film was. I used to think this was very overrated, and to be honest, this probably would have been even lower, but still, it's not that high up because I get it. I still just don't love it, and I wish I did, because there's like people who put this as their number one favorite Christopher Nolan film, and I just can't. There's something around either the character, the story, the writing that just doesn't hook me every time I watch it. And I can appreciate this on so many different levels. I think the performances from Guy Pearce here are great. I think the storytelling, the way that it jumps around is very unique. And I think Nolan really started showing his fascination with time in this film. And even the writing, it's very different. And I appreciate each and every one of those things. This makes for an intriguing watch every single time I need to watch it. But at that same time and point, out of the 5 times that I've watched this film, I just don't get the movie. I don't get why people love this film so much. I think it's good. I think it's unique, but I definitely think Nolan has made better films. Now to my number 26 is going to be Reservoir Dogs, which I really like. Again, this is kind of going back to that same thing I said about Jackie Brown. The story is decent enough, but the characters and the dialogue is what really makes this film so entertaining, and it has one of the most iconic scenes ever, the dancing scene in the warehouse. Stuck in the Middle of You. If you've heard that song, this is probably the scene that comes up in your mind right away. Funny for me, because Reservoir Dogs is actually a film that I saw directly right after Pulp Fiction when I was way younger. And again, yes, I know, I watched the TV version of Pulp Fiction, and then right after that they had Reservoir Dogs on TV too. So growing up, I didn't see a lot of the different scenes and different dialogue, and then when I finally watched it on Blu-ray, I'm like, oh, this is a very different film. And Reservoir Dogs is fun. I think Tarantino really nailed this as a directing, and on a smaller scale film. I like this idea of like the aftermath of a heist. In fact, it's kind of like inspired me to write my own version of a script that's kind of like this, and I have 2 different outlines for that. So thank you, Tarantino, for that, because yeah, without this film, I would have never came up with that idea. Coming down to my number 25 is going to be Panic Room, which is a panic-inducing time. I think this film is actually really fun and exciting. I watched this for the first time with my girlfriend earlier this year, who she loves this film, and I did enjoy it pretty much very well as too. I think the performances are strong in here, but I think what actually is really the best part about this film is the direction from David Fincher. A typical break-in film into something that's a little bit more unique, giving this panic room element and having pretty much our main 2 characters stuck in that room the entire film makes it for an intense experience, especially with everything that they are trying to do, whether it's fire, whether it's trying to break in, whether it's just trying to find out what's going on and then figuring out what is going on. It's an interesting tale that I very much enjoy, and again keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time as it's ramping up towards that end. It doesn't overstay its welcome, neither does it even understay its welcome. I think this is actually a pretty perfect paced film that in the end some of the moments are a little bit cliche that kind of leave this down a little bit lower on my list. Even adding in almost every single film on this list is absolutely great, so it's going to start getting a little bit harder soon. Coming down to my number 24 is Insomnia, Al Pacino, hoo-ha! His film with Christopher Nolan is one of the more unique ones that I've seen, especially since Robin Williams is one of the main characters as well. Hilary Swank is also in here in her most delightful role. I am not a big fan of Hilary Swank as an actress, but she is great in here. And so is, again, Robin Williams and Al Pacino. I think the performances they give in here are absolutely some of the best performances that I've seen in quite a while from these two. And probably if I were to do my top 5 performances, I might even put it in here. It very much is a unique crime drama, figuring out what happened to this girl, how was she murdered. And Robin Williams' character in here is one of the more unique ones that I've ever seen him play. The fact that Nolan directed this type of film, you can totally tell as the film continues on, especially within some of the script and direction style of how the story goes about. I really appreciate what Nolan was able to do with this film. I think especially on a crime drama surface, this could have been something that we've seen before, but even though it feels like that at times, there's always that lingering element that it's not. Now at my number 23 is The Game. This film stars Michael Douglas and Sean Penn, and what a twist and turny one this one is. I saw it for the first time as well this year when I went to go rank all the other Fincher films, and I just sat there like in awe. I put this one off last when I was rewatching everything because I didn't really expect to know what to go into this film, but I walked out going, holy crap, that was great. The twists and turns leading all throughout it are very much edge of your seat. You don't really know what's going on until the very last moment. And even then, it has another twist and turn, which I don't love. That's why it's actually lower on this list. I think if that ending would have gone for it, I would have liked it even a little bit more. And looking into things, it seems like Fincher didn't like that ending either, which I totally get. Like the film ends like multiple times. And there's one ending, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That feels like a David Fincher element. And then it goes to the next ending, and I'm like, okay, so this is not a David Fincher film directly. Well, it is. He directed the film. The game's really good if you haven't seen it yet. Again, it's kind of creepy, it's kind of mysterious, but it's one that you need to go grab and check out right now. Coming down at my number 22 is the most controversial pick on this whole entire list, and that is Seven. I think Seven is an excellent movie, but it's not one that ever sticks around in my mind for some reason. I saw it again for the first time this year, and I've watched it one other time since because I needed to wrap my brain around the whole entire movie. Sucks because I wonder if my experience with this film was ruined because I had heard about everything. The box, the twists, the turns. I heard about it all. And again, that's my fault for putting off Seven for so long. I can definitely say that this film is excellently directed, excellently written. I love the performances from Morgan Freeman and especially Brad Pitt in this film. I love the sense of this film. I love how it feels. I love how you truly feel like you're on edge, and the writing within every moment of this, especially with the killer in this, is really unique, and it's something that I don't think we've seen before, and Seven does keep that interesting element, but when it comes to other films on this list, it just doesn't feel as memorable for me. And that might be because I was ruined by the twists and turns, and I expected every single element to happen. I knew it was going to happen. Sucks because I wish I didn't, because maybe I would probably put this film higher, but since I had heard about it for so long, and then I finally watched it, I'm like, oh, I knew everything that was going to happen in this movie. It's still a great movie. It's excellently made. It's just not one that sinks around in my brain for a little bit. Maybe eventually I'll finally get it. Maybe it'll finally like twist and turn around in my head. But for only watching it twice, this is how I feel about it. Please don't hate me. Coming down to my number 21 is Mank, the brand new Fincher film that came out earlier this year. The more I think about it, the more I adore it. This is a film that it's absolutely a giant love story to classic Hollywood. And there's one other film on this list that's kind of that exact same route, but two different parallels to it. And I liked one more than the other, but I think Fincher directed this film with such a mannerism that hasn't been seen before. And the script from his father, Jack Fincher, is one of my favorite scripts of the year. The dialogue flies off the screen like this, with every single beat and moment feeling like a heartbeat and just in perfect sync with everything else going about in it. I like how the story is also told. It's a little bit different and unique, and I think the fact is that I was worried about this film because I'm not a big fan of Citizen Kane, and it's pretty much about the writing of Citizen Kane, but it's way more than that. Like, it's through one perspective of one guy's eyes throughout the differences and the changes of Hollywood throughout the political landscape and even the filmmaking landscape. And I always appreciate these looks in the behind the scenes of, how do films get made? How does this get made? And even throwing in there, Gary Oldman is fantastic in here, but Amanda Seyfried absolutely steals the entire show, and I was in love with her character. I was in love with her performance, and I still hope she gets nominated for that because she damn right deserves to. As well, Mank has an amazing score and incredible and impeccable cinematography that absolutely had my jaw on the floor. I know there are some people who feel this film is a little bit dark and doesn't really have much heart to it, and I don't think it really needed to, but I think the dialogue in here is absolutely exquisite, and I just had a blast with Mank, and I can't wait to rewatch it again. Coming down to my number 20 is going to be The Hateful Eight, which I really like this film. I think Tarantino destroys this film in a lot of different ways, and when it comes down to a story capability, while, again, the script is very strong in this film, it's that story that I actually really like. I like that act structure. I like how it feels like a play, and, you've probably heard me on this channel talk about how sometimes I don't like when films do that, but I think Hateful Eight pulled it off in a very unique manner. Plus, as well, the performances, this all-star cast. The first time you watch this film, you're going about, well, who did it? Was it you? Was it you? Was it you? You feel along for the mystery, and I think Tarantino really plays that off so well. I think for his 8th film, this is actually a really fun 8th film for him to have gone on and made. Performances with some hilarious moments, and as well, some very intense moments. I love the act structure of this, and I love where the film ended up going. I think Hateful Eight is a little bit underrated when people talk about Tarantino films, but it's one that you guys should definitely check out again. Coming down to my number 19 is Dunkirk, guys. Oh my god. Yeah, this is a really good one as well. I love what Nolan did in this film, and I think the fact that he paralleled the whole script to not really have much character development, but more of an immersive experience that you are with these soldiers on this beach trying to survive. And the fact of time, again, time is key to a lot of his films. The intersecting storylines are absolutely beautiful, especially on rewatches when you finally really get the nuances and the technical stuff and the script writing in there. It's really much more a smarter film than people give credit to, and I think what Nolan did in this film was directed the hell out of it. I would still argue that this might be his best directed film besides one other one on this list, but Nonetheless, Dunkirk felt like a giant passion project, and it's one that I immensely support. It's one that I immensely really enjoy and really like. It's, again, though, it's higher on this list because of the quality that it's made for, but it's one of the ones that I really don't really care to rewatch. Now, my number 18 is going to be Fight Club, one of the best third acts in a film ever. And some people will say the same thing about Seven, which Seven does have a great third act, but I love Fight Club's third act even more. Because Fight Club is a film that I like the first act, I really like the second act, and then I completely am in love with that third act. And it's funny because if it would have just been like the first and second act, this would probably be even lower on my list, but I love Fight Club for the same reason that many other people do. The characters in here are absolutely bonkers. Especially when we're talking about characters, Tyler Durden is one of the coolest characters that have ever come to filmmaking. And Brad Pitt, my God, the guy just can do no wrong. I adore Fight Club to pieces. I think this is a film that, again, keeps those twists and turns. And that twist, the twist that I didn't even know when I first watched this film, still hits me every single time. And I wish, again, that's why I wish Seven kind of hit me the same way. Coming down at my number 17 is going to be The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Now, Fincher really much went ahead and said, I'm going to make a really great film here. And he did. Because while I've never seen the international films, I'm actually really excited to see those because I want to see the rest of Elizabeth's story. The thing with The Girl Dragon Tattoo is one of the most dark, desperate worlds that I've ever seen in a film. And it's actually really intense. And I love the world and how they build on this little like island that these people are living on and the twists and turns. And again, I don't want to get into spoilers because I feel like this is one of the more underseen Fincher films. But where it goes is just damn dark. And especially when Elizabeth, one of the coolest characters ever in any film, one of my favorite female protagonists, I love her story, and some of the things that she has to go through here are damn right disgusting, but she gets her revenge at times, and I very satisfying. Round of applause for her. Daniel Craig is also great in here. I think Fincher really directed a great mystery thriller here, and it sucks that we'll never get the sequel to this because I really wanted to see these characters continue. Down to my number 16 is The Prestige, which has one of the coolest twists ever in a film. A lot of people have never seen The Prestige, and you should. I think it's an underseen Nolan film as well, and when it comes down to Nolan, I think this guy directed a really cool film. I mean, hell, this film has Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale and has some of the coolest twists and turns between both those characters about dual rivaling magicians who have just this egg to get back at the other and beat the other and overcome the other. It's so damn unique, and I love these type of movies because when we get films like this, that rivalry is so prevalent throughout the entire film that, again, it sinks inside your mind and continues to play around within certain of the ideologies that play around in them. The way that they get back at each other is absolutely mind-boggling and also very disgusting. It gets down to that third act. I think this film builds, and I really love the first act. I really started to love the second act, and then I over the moon love the third act. Every film from here on up, I adore to pieces and love, and Prestige is definitely one of those. Coming down on my number 15 is The Dark Knight Rises. Now, I know a lot of people have issues with this movie, but I love it. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because of Tom Hardy's Bane, who I think is one of the more underrated villains in a DC film. Or maybe it's even because this film is not more about Batman, but the man behind the mask and Christian Bale's recovery, or may I say Bruce Wayne's recovery inside this prison. This film has a great 3-act structure, and I love the way that, again, Nolan was able to direct this film in such a manner. I think the way that it builds up to that finale, that epic third siege kind of thing of everyone fighting back for Gotham City is very much intense, and I love the very, very ending of this film, especially with Bruce Wayne, Anne Hathaway, and Michael Caine. Everything really much works out in this film for me, and I just, I get the complaints, but none of those complaints have ever bothered me. Coming down at my number 14 is Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. I love both Kill Bills, but for the sake of this, for me, the way I view it, Kill Bill is one film. And I wish I could see this in theaters, the Whole Bloody Affair version, because I've only seen the first volume and then the second volume. Tarantino just nails this film, and I think the way that he has his influences from anime to Japan culture to even the Western culture is all really much prevalent in here. I think the action sequences are actually some of probably the best that we've seen out of all three of these directors, and even throwing in there a little bit more some of the best writing that Tarantino has done. The way that he brings about this character, the bride, in her revenge thriller, give me more. I know he's talked about doing a third Kill Bill. I don't exactly know what story you would do, but I'm interested, because if we get Uma Thurman back as the bride, I'm in. Guys, before we get to my top 13, make sure again to hit that like and subscribe button, and thank you so much for joining us on this video. Make sure to go check out everyone else's rankings down below after you guys are done with this, as well as, guys, head on over to See How Much on Films on how to see films early, and of course, it's a big thing to you, and a big thing to my Patreon supporters, because without you, I won't be able to do this. Now back to the video. Coming down on my number 13 is going to be The Social Network. Now, I think Jesse Eisenberg is absolutely incredible in this, but personally, my favorite performance in this is Andrew Garfield. And the guy should have won an Oscar that year. He wasn't even nominated. That's a joke. But The Social Network, I think, for me, also should have won Best Picture that year. For The Social Network is absolutely impeccable, and it keeps you, again, on the edge of your seat the entire time you are watching it. The revelation that the fact that this is, you hear the concept, you're like, oh, it's the making of Facebook. You think that would be a boring film. It's not, because there's a lot of drama behind the scenes, and with every single moment and tension, the buildup of how Facebook got to where it was at, seeing all the people that Mark Zuckerberg screwed over, and seeing how they're all coming after him, are really interesting. Overall, love The Social Network. It's a film I like to rewatch every single year, and it's become one of my favorite films of all time. Coming down at my number 12 is Pulp Fiction. I freaking love this movie so much. Tarantino, I think this might be one of his strongest scripts yet. I think this and everything above this are some of his strongest scripts yet. Some of his most interesting characters as well. Pulp Fiction has the most interesting thing because it's all these storylines intersecting and weaving into one another, and how they all correlate and tie together kind of is one of the more fun parts about it. It has some of the most iconic scenes, especially between Uma Thurman and John Travolta, that I will always remember, especially that dancing scene. That's one of my favorite scenes ever in a film. I just smile, I laugh, and I enjoy this film immensely every single time. It's one of the ones that I do have to watch every single year, and every time I do, I pick out something new, and I absolutely adore it. Coming down at my number 11 is going to be The Batman Begins. Now, personally for me, I think this is the best made Batman film. Now, I understand that there's one other film on this list that is higher, and it's higher because I don't consider it just a plain old Batman film. This is a straight up Batman film, and Nolan just went for it. He took this origin story and pushed it through, and I love it because I love that Ra's al Ghul is the villain of this. I think the action is probably some of the weakest elements of Batman Begins, but the intriguing level for me is the ideologies between Bruce Wayne, Ra's al Ghul, and of course even Scarecrow, played by Cillian Murphy, who is really damn creepy in here. I love Cillian Murphy. I wish the guy was more of a household name at this point. I mean, Nolan making a Batman film was one of the more unique aspects of Batman Begins, and it's one of the films that has always stuck with me, especially within the same desperate and despair that he brings into this movie. I think, again, the action set pieces are the most frustrating elements of all these Batman films, and definitely the weakest, but the fact that it's even this high shows how good the story, shows how good the characters and the writing all are, and especially the way that he brought to life Gotham City in this film, I think is the best version of Gotham City in the entire Dark Knight trilogy. Coming down at my number 10 is going to be Gone Girl, one of the more intriguing films that I read the book for, and I said, damn, if they can pull this twist off in the movie, it's going to be quite insane. And I remember taking my friend opening night to see this film, and his jaw hit the floor on the multiple twists and turns throughout it all. Ben Affleck turns in an excellent performance in here. So does Rosamund Pike, who, man, it's creepy as hell. It makes you rethink everything. Never screw over your wife's kids. They'll get back at you. And Gone Girl is a really unique revenge thriller that is different than more other crime dramas that we've seen before. It mixes all those tones together, but brings it about into one of the more enjoyable, entertaining, edge-of-your-seat rides that I love. I think the script is a major player to why this film works so immensely well, but so is Fincher's directing. If you haven't seen Gone Girl yet, go watch it. Coming down to my number 9 is going to be Inglorious Basterds. This is a movie that the first time I saw it, I didn't like. It was my least favorite Tarantino film at the time. But that was like back in, 2008? The more and more I've seen this film, the more I'm like, holy crap, what was I on when I saw this film? Maybe I was just too young to enjoy it or even get it. But Inglorious Basterds it's a bastard of a time. Brad Pitt is freaking great in here. I love him to death. I think, but really overall, Christoph Waltz and the other performances are obviously the more stronger elements of this. I think this is not just an entertaining film, but it's one that every time I watch it, there's some sensibility to what Tarantino is able to do. He makes these serious stories very entertaining, and the dialogue's so witty, and I think Inglourious Basterds is not just his best directing but also one of his better scripts. Why is it at my number 9 set a little bit higher? Well, because it's my list, and the way that I enjoy these films now are the other ones I like to rewatch more. Inglourious Basterds, though, has a great opening scene that probably is one of my favorites and also one of my favorite third acts. I think the second act may be a little bit slower than others, but don't get me wrong. When someone's like, hey, let's watch Inglourious Basterds, I'm like, Let's do it. Speaking of other Tarantino films, coming out on my number 8 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, his latest film that swept me off my feet and made me fall in love. And again, like I talked about Mank earlier being a very big love letter to classic Hollywood, so is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I think it's even better. I think this is a movie that really much just is about two best friends hanging out and going through Hollywood, and maybe even running into the Manson family, and even having to go to work sometimes. Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt are absolutely have great charisma in here, and really chemistry together is absolutely just like that next level thing. But even adding in there, this film has all the Tarantino elements that you love, that dialogue that you love, the moments of just two characters sitting around a TV talking about what they're watching. That's just insane. I would like pay to see any commentary between these two. And even adding in the elements with Margot Robbie's Sharon Tate very much feels like a love letter to Sharon Tate as well as an actress. And I think it's really cool to see how Margot Robbie was able to bring that elegance to life, even though she's not in the film for that much. I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a once upon a time, a great time. And I love rewatching this film every other couple of months because I think it's one that sucks me in, it brings me into this world, and I could just hang out with Brad Pitt and DiCaprio's characters all day long. Coming down on my number 7 is going to be The Dark Knight. Now, this film is absolutely incredible. Again, it's not as high on my list because for me, I don't think it's a Batman film. I feel like it's more of in the middle between a Joker and a Batman film, but that's awesome, great, because I think Heath Ledger destroyed the role as the Joker. I mean, I have a damn mural of the guy like right behind my screen. I also even love the opening shot for this. I think it's one of my favorite opening shots and opening scenes for an entire Nolan film. I think Nolan pretty much made a crime drama, a heist film of some sorts. Imagine Heat, but as a Batman film. That's what The Dark Knight is. It's very intense. It changed the landscape forever for comic book films, and I'll always respect that. It is one of the best comic book films, and it's one that I do love rewatching this whole entire trilogy every single year. And when I get to this one, I damn right have a big smile on my face the entire time. It's very exciting, and the fact that I've never seen this in theaters makes me really sad. Coming down to my number 6 is easily my most controversial pick. Please don't hate me for this one. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, I enjoy immensely. I love this film to death. I think this is a movie that swept me off my feet and kind of felt like the Forrest Gump that Fincher would make, and even better than Forrest Gump. Sorry. Curious Case of Benjamin Button, I didn't really care to watch at all. I sat there and I'm like, I guess. Let's put it in. Let's start it. I got to do this Fincher ranking, so I got to see all of his films I haven't seen before. And I was so sucked into this film within the first hour. I just couldn't stop. And the more and more that I thought about it, I've seen this film like twice this year, 3 times actually. This year, ever since I watched that for the first time, because I was just so in love with this character of Benjamin Button. I love Brad Pitt's performance. Cate Blanchett turns in one of my favorite performances the girl has ever given. And I've always loved her as an actress, but this is one of her best performances yet. The fact that it just goes over this span of time, showing how the world has changed, showing how he has changed, his perspective has changed, and again, him aging backwards is a very key part to that. Some of the CGI is a little bit okay now because it's been a couple years, but at the time, this was a revolution. And I think what Fincher did here is this is one of his most unique films. It might be not one of his most successful ones, but Benjamin Button is a love story that I want to go on every single day if I possibly could. And I absolutely love it. When a movie has a love story, it can win my heart over. Coming down to my top 5 is Tenet. I've seen this film 3 times and I cannot get enough of it. I can't wait to show my family it. I can't wait to rewatch it again. The action set pieces in here, the globetrotting elements of a spy thriller are all poised throughout here, rushing through with a waterfall. The cinematography is excellent. The Ludwig score in here is one of my favorite Nolan scores ever, and the performances from everyone indeed here is absolutely fantastic. Tenet's one of my favorite films of the year, but the thing that I really much enjoy about it is truly those performances. I really like John David Washington as the protagonist. I like that they just call him the protagonist. It makes the film very immersive, as it makes you feel like you are in his shoes and what you would do. But Robert Pattinson is truly the big all-star of this as Neil. His charisma pours throughout the screen, and it's hard to take your eyes off the entire him. I mean, he's great in the film. He directed the hell out of this movie, and I actually do think this is his best directed film, probably. The way that he directed every single scene in here is great. Some of the writing is a little bit confusing, but on especially rewatches, you start to understand the film more and more. I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, Zach, why isn't this higher on your list? I got to give it more time to really put it through with these other all-star films coming up. Down to my number 4 is Django Unchained, my favorite Tarantino film, and one of my favorite westerns of all time. Jamie Foxx freaking just kills this role as Django, but also Christopher Waltz as his companion in here is wonderful. I think the performances in here are some of Tarantino's best. You have Christoph Waltz, Jamie Foxx, DiCaprio, Samuel Jackson, all just giving excellent performances, none all the way through. But Tarantino's directing and writing here is one of the more interesting aspects for me. I think every single moment of this is heavily entertaining, especially because of a script-wise. It is a long, epic Western journey, but it's one that, in the sense, is for a love story, and it's to save Jamie Foxx's wife. In fact, really love this film. I like rewatching it every single year because I like to dive into this world. I like bringing about this world that Tarantino brought us into, and just this, again, mixes the tones of love, revenge, crime, Western, and you can totally tell that Tarantino was so passionate about all of those. It has the great homages to older Western films as it has to modern Western films, and Tarantino truly made a masterpiece with this one. Coming down to my number 3 is probably Nolan's most emotional film, and in fact, it's my favorite Nolan film, but I'm missing one more on this list because I gotta talk about that one and why it's my number 1. But I love Interstellar. Interstellar is an incredible feast. It's a sci-fi epic that very much harkens back, and you can totally tell is a passion project from Nolan, especially as it has many influences from 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I actually think it's even better. Sorry, I know it's blasphemy, but I love it. Interstellar is a film that has grown on me more and more every single time I watch it. I absolutely go into tears every single time it gets in that third act. The visual effects in here are honestly jaw-dropping. They are jaw-dropping. My jaw hits the floor every single time I watch this film, especially that black hole scene at the very, very end of it all. It's great, and I love the characters as well. Matthew McConaughey and Hathaway give such amazing performances in this, and Interstellar, I think, is also one of the most underrated Nolan films. Coming down to my number 2 is going to be Zodiac. Zodiac is David Fincher's easily his best film yet. It's intense, it's enthralling, it's interesting, and just as obsessive as Jake Gyllenhaal becomes about the Zodiac killer, you become obsessive with Jake Gyllenhaal, and of course obsessed about this film with every single layer and nuance that gets put throughout this film. I think it's Fincher's best written film, best directed film, and his most intense film yet. The one scene that always unsettles me the most is when Jake Gyllenhaal's underneath the basement. You hear the person walking, and you're like, is that in his head, or is there actually someone up there? Gyllenhaal, Downey, Mark Ruffalo, all fantastic performances across the board, but the fact that this film ends in a way that you still don't, the Zodiac killer's still out there. It's very uneasy, and I love what they were able to do to this film, and I would rewatch Zodiac every single day if I possibly needed to. Coming down, my number 1 is Inception. Now, again, like I said, this is probably my second favorite Nolan film at this point. I love Inception to pieces. I think Inception is an incredible film. I think it's Nolan's best made film, from pacing wise to directing wise, from writing wise to explaining the idea, from performances, from editing, from everything of its nature. I think Inception is a perfect mix of everything that you could possibly have for this unique action sci-fi concept, and every single time I watch it, I love it. I also have a nostalgic feeling for this. For the first time I ever saw it in theaters, it blew me away. It was one of the best theater experiences I ever had, watching it in IMAX theater with a full crowd of people, and especially sitting next to my grandma, who fell in love with the film as well. Inception will always, when it comes about all these films, it'll always get to the top one due to these reasons, and especially those nostalgic feelings for it. We all have those, but Inception follows its way up there, and this wouldn't be a 31 on 31 ranking of all these films if I wasn't to put Inception, because I think Inception will inspire many people to years to come, and very much passionate filmmakers will see Inception and be like, I want to make a film like this. Nolan killed this idea. I love Inception, and that ending, guys, come on, it fell. It had to. Let me know your guys' thoughts on that. Guys, that's my ranking of the 31 on 31 films from Nolan, Fincher, and Tarantino. I had a blast doing this. Thank you so much to everyone who invited me all over to do this. I had a blast doing it. Make sure guys to go check out all their channels, subscribe to them, watch their videos as well. And just a big thank you to you, and a big thank you to my Patreon supporters once again, guys. I had a blast doing this video. Hope to see you guys soon. Can't wait to see your rankings. And of course, until next time, stay classy.